안녕하세요. 미국주식으로 은퇴하기 미주은입니다. 지난주에 제가 아주 자랑스럽게 공지 말씀을 드린 것처럼 앞으로 미주은 채널에서는요, 매달 한 번씩 베스트 바이라는 코너를 공유할 수 있게 됐습니다. 제가 올해부터 아시아 총괄 대표를 맡아서 함께 일하고 있는 시킹알파에는요, 수많은 파트너들이 있는데 수많은 주식 전문 블로거들도 함께하고 있습니다. 무려 7,000명이 넘는 주식 전문 블로거들이 현재 시킹알파라는 플랫폼을 통해서 활동을 하고 있는데요. 이렇게 많은 미국 주식 전문 블로거들 중에서 최고의 블로그인 앱 이코노미 인사이트라는 커뮤니티가 있거든요. 이 커뮤니티를 운영하고 있는 버틀란드와 미주은이 파트너십을 결성하게 됐습니다. 지난주에는요, 버틀란드가 그동안 최고의 종목을 발굴해내면서 성공적인 투자자로 발돋움할 수 있었던 그만의 비결을 우리가 함께 들어봤잖아요. 오늘은 드디어 버틀란드가 추천하는 첫 번째 종목을 함께 공부할 수 있는 기회가 마련됐습니다. 버틀란드라는 성공적인 투자자가 어떤 종목을 추천하는지도 매우 중요하겠지만요, 그보다는 어떻게 성공적인 투자자는 어떠한 방식을 통해서 한 종목의 투자 가치를 평가하는지 자세한 프레젠테이션을 함께 보시면서 한 수 배워보는 시간으로 생각하시면 좀 더 오늘 방송의 의미가 커지지 않을까 개인적으로 생각을 합니다. 자, 그러면 미주은에서 야심차게 준비한 베스트 바이 그 두 번째 방송 바로 시작합니다. Hi, Bertrand. Are you ready for the second part?
Absolutely, yes, let's do it.
Fantastic. Okay, so from the screen, we can see that the name of the stock you are introducing today is UiPath, correct?
That's correct. Yes, UiPath. It's a ticker symbol PATH.
All right, so please let us know why you feel like UiPath could be a good investment opportunity today.
Yeah, so this is a company I actually recently added to my position this month, or a little bit earlier this month, and selected it as part of the 6 best buys now. So the key aspect to appreciate about UiPath is that they are embracing a very important and new leading industry, which is enterprise automation. So that might be something new to you or to your audience. The way to think about enterprise automation is that as businesses have moved their business to the cloud or to a digital world, now they can actually improve their efficiency. And so, I mentioned before how I've worked in financial operations, right, in the gaming industry, and I've witnessed firsthand how tedious it can be, for example, to book a journal entry. Like early in my career, I was doing that, like pulling data and putting it together to book a journal entry in Oracle or whatever system you use. I've seen people in my teams, data analysts having to pull data from specific sales platform, also having to put it together. You could waste 80% of your time sometimes on something just that requires manual work, very routine work. And so the premise behind UiPath is that if you have a task that is manual, repeatable, and somewhat automatable, they want to do it for you. So they want to save time and effort. They want to improve the productivity of the whole team. And they want to be able to do so while making sure that everything is compliant. Basically, the documentation is right, the reporting is right, because companies that have a lot of tedious tasks like that, they tend to be public companies or government agencies. And so you still need a lot of elements that are related to, things that can be audited, that the process is going to be right. So that's what the problem they are trying to solve. So they like to brand themselves as an automation layer. So you have to think of it like it comes on top of everything you're doing. It adds this layer of automation. If maybe the way you edit or you post a video on YouTube, maybe some of that could be automated. So the way the software would work is that for a few days or weeks, it would let someone work on their computer and try to identify what part of the task is manual but repeatable and could be done by a software. And so they call it software robots. They are not physical robots, right? They are just in the background being able to do tasks for you. And so they look at what people do, their daily work, and they try to mine. They call it process mining. So identify what is automatable and then actually do it. And so you may hear of RPA a lot today. This stands for robotic process automation, and that's the entire process UiPath is trying to offer to their customers. So they have 4 components that they try to deliver for their clients. The first one is the discover part. So I just mentioned process mining, this idea of running in the background so that they identify things that could be automated for you. Then there is the building part. It consists basically of offering simple tools, maybe something like low code, drag and drop, where you let a developer internally set up what task will be automated. And they are building quite a library actually of tasks that can be automated because, you know, from a company to another, everybody uses the same systems, the same tools. And so what they're building is a library of out-of-the-box tools that are ready to be implemented because they are building over time. This library, the more people they work with, the more they expand their library. And they also have the manage part. This is basically making sure that the company can drive insights from these tasks, maximize the value of the software. And the last point in purple in the bottom left is engage. So it's really making sure everything works properly, right? Is compliant with any kind of rules, in particular for accounting teams, or, you know, signing contracts or anything like that, making sure that everything runs smoothly and that there is no problem. Another aspect to keep in mind is the deployment of that system. So it can be on-premise. You know, this is the old way of delivering a software solution. On-premise, you have actually servers implemented locally. But in this day and age, most people decide to go with a cloud solution. It's easier to implement. And so we'll touch more on that. But basically, UiPath offers both. You can choose based on your preference. Some government agencies, they might prefer on-premise for a security reason. So they covered that as well. So part of the reason why UiPath came to my attention is that, well, not only as someone in operations, I know the pain, you know, the stress point of having to deal with manual tasks. I suffered from it as someone who was sometimes working on manual tasks. And basically the other aspect is also my previous work at PricewaterhouseCoopers, where I know how the social dynamics work when consulting companies work with their customers. So here's the thing. On the one hand, UiPath has technology partners. So those are people they work with to add an automation layer on top of their product, right? You're using Salesforce, you're using DocuSign, Adobe Sign, whatever that may be, they add the automation layer on top. So that's on the library of tools. But on the other side of things, there is also the importance of the business partners. So you can see it on the right side of the slide here. So business partners are basically, for the most part, the biggest consulting group in the world. And what they do is when they have an assignment with a big public company, they're going to come up with a proposal where they're going to say, hey, we can help you improve your processes, save time, basically save money. We have this partner called UiPath. We can automate your processes. And so they become a sales funnel. And that's very important because when you're already paying those consulting groups to help to have them improve your processes, you're willing to pay, right? Because this is what you signed up for. And so it's very important to appreciate this because these consulting groups have really helped build that reputation for UiPath and make them the leaders they are today. And I'll touch on evidence of the leading position, but this is a key aspect and one that I was able to appreciate because I've seen in the past working at PwC that kind of dynamic.
Do you happen to know what kind of fee UiPath pay to these business partners? Is there any kind of a commission or fixed fee?
Yeah, so I don't have the exact numbers and you know, things evolve fast. So I was not in that specific area of the business. So I wouldn't want to, you know, come up with a number that is off. So there have partnerships. I think there is this notion that everybody wins, right? Because from a reputation perspective, those consulting groups also benefit from the implementation of UiPath. So I couldn't say for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but these are the very big consulting companies who are actually selling the product from UiPath. UiPath then.
Yep, they are doing the hard work for you. So that's not the only that's not the only sales funnel, of course, but it's an important one that brings a lot of people in. And to implement such a service, it's a large cost to acquire customers. We're going to touch on that with their sales and marketing costs. So having that sales funnel is very important.
Nice. Yeah. I asked the question because I was wondering, because the UiPath has a very huge amount of sales and marketing cost. I was wondering if that cost was related to this business partner fee, or is it a separate cost? That would be something interesting to find out.
Absolutely. Yeah, unfortunately, they don't break it down. So it's unclear if some of it is covered through that. Yeah.
Sure.
So I talked in the previous video about how what I like to see in a company is a track record of innovation. Like, do I have evidence in the past few years that the company is not resting on its laurels and kind of delivering new products at a steady pace for future revenue streams? And since 2015, which is really when UiPath started to double down on this idea of automation, software automation, and specifically target enterprise customers, they have really been honing on delivering new products, improving their service, adding those important tools. So I mentioned quickly the drag and drop, making it easy to implement and low code for developers. So those are examples of ways they've improved their product over time. And again, there is this notion of network effects where every time they get an extra tool that is set up for one customer, then anybody else can use it once they are perfectly synced up to work with DocuSign or work with Salesforce, whatever that may be. So management is an important thing that I cover, in my investment research. So good news here, the two co-founders, Daniel Dines and Mario Stirka, they are still part of the C-suite. So we can call UiPath a founder-led company. Daniel Dines is the CEO and Mario Stirka is the CTO. So they are in the two most important positions right now at the company. There is a 26% insider ownership. So Daniel Dines basically still have a lot of exposure to the stock. So we like that we call it skin in the game, right? The Glassdoor reviews, extremely high, even for Silicon Valley based company, 94% approval of CEO. This is basically as high as it gets, with 81% of people working at UiPath would recommend working there. And you have similar scores on Comparably, which is another aggregator, of employee reviews. And in general, very high reviews. They actually ranked UiPath as one of the top employers in the Bay Area last year. So how big is the opportunity is going to be the next question we are trying to cover. I like to say that I want to be directionally correct. So are they on a secular trend? Are they embracing a trend that will go up and to the right in the foreseeable future? And so they have used several intelligence partners, namely in their S1 they mentioned IDC. So this is an external vendor who has estimated the potential for this industry at 17 billion in 2020 to grow up to 30 billion by 2024. And management believes that the broader, fully automated enterprise could be as large as 60 billion, in the following years. So today we'll talk about that, but UiPath makes about a little short of $1 billion in annual recurring revenue. So, we're in 2022, so probably the opportunity is at about 20 billion today. So they have a 5% market share maybe, and they are the leader. So that share could actually expand potentially, and they are barely touching the surface, right? Because if really this market is going to grow to 60 billion or more, but just by maintaining their market share, they could already really grow significantly in the coming decade, right? So that's something I really like to see.
Sure.
So I want to talk about their competition and their leading position. So when you look at software, you could look at the performance of the company itself to see evidence of success. But what I like to use is any kind of intelligence provider that is somewhat independent and will compare those businesses. You may be familiar, Charles, with G2. G2 Grid is basically reviews from developers who come in and say whether or not they like the product. So the satisfaction is based on the reviews they get, and also the market presence is based on how many reviews they get, so the volume of reviews itself. And so good news, UiPath is right there. You can see the two little dots over there. So those are the two leaders in robotic process automation, UiPath that we're talking about today, and the other one is Automation Anywhere. This is a private company, so we cannot invest in that one, but they expect to go public at some point in the coming quarters, so this will be interesting to watch. So that's the closest competitor. Interestingly, if you look at the rest of the chart, everybody is, the rest of the pack is quite far. The reviews and the number of reviews. So Microsoft is there, IBM is there for big companies, right, that you're of course familiar with. But Automation Anywhere and UiPath they are really far ahead of the pack. And then if we look at other providers like the Forrester Wave, you can see UiPath is considered like the company with the strongest strategy and the strongest current offering. They are right there. And we can find Automation Anywhere. Again, this was the closest comp. They are right here. So they come short of UiPath, but they are among the leaders as well. And we have another few companies here. So second evidence of UiPath being the clear leader in robotic process automation. And I have two more to show you. Which is great. I usually don't find such clear evidence of domination, in a field. So we have the Magic Quadrant from Gartner last year. Same thing, UiPath is considered the clear leader. So they rank ability to execute and completeness of vision. For both things, UiPath is really at the top. And Automation Anywhere comes back again as the closest comp, but it still comes short of it. The last chart I have on competition is the peak matrix from Everest Group. So this one is a little bit more specific. They talk about process mining. So if you remember a few slides ago, I mentioned how to discover processes, they use process mining. So it's just a subcategory. This is a bit more specific, but even then, for that category, they are considered a star performer, and you have other smaller, more like point solution competitors there that are mentioned. So again, no matter how we look at it, UiPath is a clear leader and above and beyond everybody else. All right, so we just covered the opportunity, the competition, management, what the product is. So now I want to go a little bit deeper into how they make money. So I'm sure you're familiar with this, Charles, but it is a land and expand software. So they use that usually for any product that is free to try. You can start for free, and then you can adjust your consumption based on what you need, right? So I took this screenshot from their pricing page where they show how they will charge for every single software robot they're going to set up for an individual, where they charge a monthly fee. So it's a monthly subscription model. And the more you need, the higher the cost. If you, for example, need to do process mining, you're going to pay more, right? So if you want to involve like discovery because you are not sure what can be automated or not, you're going to be more for that. So that's going to be what they show here, where you need to contact the sales team because you're most likely a large company. So software model, recurring revenue, predictability, right? That's all I love and that I touched on in the previous video. One thing that I want to touch on that is very important when you review the opportunity of UiPath is the ARR. So it stands for annualized recurring revenue. And that's something that is the most important KPI because it shows the annualized run rate of their subscription, right? So think about it, if you're subscribed to Netflix, $10 per month might be your cost, 120 is your annual recurring cost, right? And so it's just annualized. And eventually, maybe it takes a few quarters, revenue, which is the GAAP metric, right? The accounting metric, will follow annualized renewal rates, right? Because it starts from somebody will start subscribing, and then a year later, of course, the full revenue will be the equivalent of the annualized run rate. But if you just secured a new customer, at first, it's only going to be for that month that they have a new subscription. So it's going to be 1/12 of it. I'm oversimplifying a little bit here intentionally, but that's why I care more about the ARR growth, because it tells me the customer wins and what the run rate will look like later. because of quirks in the revenue recognition under US GAAP, the generally accepted accounting principles, you're going to have revenue is going to lag a little bit usually. And it depends on whether or not customers use the cloud solution or if they use on-premise. There's going to be more revenue front-loaded when it's on-premise. And because the cloud is becoming a bigger share of the business, you actually have the pro rata of the ARR is over a longer period. So something to keep in mind, if you see revenue growth not being as fast as ARR, eventually over several years, it's going to be the same. And we see it here over 8 quarters. Management shared this comparison showing that it's going to be mostly the same.
Sure.
So how well are they doing? That's the next question, right? So how well is UiPath doing? So they are closing, I mentioned that, close to $1 billion in annual recurring revenue. That's a growth of 59% in the last quarter. So there was actually an acceleration from 58 the previous quarter. So looking very strong and accelerating. They have a very large customer base, more than 10,000 customers. And those are big customers, by the way, enterprise grade customers. Almost 15% of those customers, they spend more than 100K. So if you need evidence, right, that they are doing something right, that people are spending a lot of money on UiPath. And my favorite, this one is my favorite metric, Charles. It's the dollar-based net retention rate. So for those who don't know, this means that the way management calculates this is they say, okay, a year ago, we were making, let's say, $100 of revenue from a pool of customers. How does it look like today, right? So compared to a year ago. And so it factors people who stopped subscribing. It factors how much they increase their spending. But it really factors that evolution after a full year, net of churn, right? Net of the loss of customers. And so in this example, from 100, now they make 145. So $45 more than they did a year ago. This is incredibly important because it shows that even somehow, if they cannot find new customers, they would have still increased their revenue by 45%.
It means that maybe the satisfaction level from the existing customer is very high, so they do not really unsubscribe the product, right? So that's the first good news. Second news is maybe there is a aggressive cross-selling happening so that the same customers spend more, right?
That's exactly right. And I love to find evidence in the numbers because it's one thing to have management pitching like, oh, my customers are happy for this and that. But here we have actual evidence with this number that no matter what, they are doing something right.
I think this is the best. I think one of the best the dollar-based net retention rate. I think a similar number can be found only from Snowflake.
That's exactly right. Snowflake is the highest I've seen on the public markets. And then I think the closest comp to UiPath I have in mind is Unity, ticker symbol U. They are at 140%. So, but it's still shy of UiPath. So they are in the top for sure. And those things evolve over time. It's not going to stay 145 necessarily forever, right? But at least it indicates that in the past year, they are really doing something right.
Excellent.
I wanted to touch briefly on cloud because if you invest in UiPath, you're doing it for the cloud. Down the line, it's going to be the most important driver of growth. And so we just touched on that 925 million of ARR. So 140 million out of that is already cloud. Okay. So that's a little more than a third of their customers. They have north of 10,000. So 3,800 already use cloud products, either hybrid or cloud. And what's fascinating about this number is that they launched the cloud platform only a little over 2 years ago, 27 months ago. So they already proved in their numbers that the transition is working. It's working very well. People are transitioning. And in Q4, which is the most recent quarter, more than half of the new subscribers actually adopted the cloud. Okay. So again, why is cloud good as shareholders? Because it is predictable. It is more flexible, right? So it's easy to onboard customers. You don't have to install anything on site. You don't have to. It makes it easy for everyone. So it's a very positive trend. I've invested in companies like MongoDB, With Atlas, they shifted as well to cloud very successfully. We have Elastic that's doing that right now. So we have other enterprise software companies that are shifted and did so successfully, and we usually see good results there from a stock performance as well.
I see.
So the 145% dollar-based net retention, I wanted to use that example. This is from the S1 of the company. They showed how from FY16 to FY21, their top 50 customers increased their spending on the platform 81x. It's almost hard to wrap my head around these numbers because they are so big. So imagine now applying another 81x to these numbers moving forward, right? So that would be probably crazy, and things are going to taper off or normalize because once you make it available to all your employees, if you will, at some point you hit a plateau. But think about new customers that start using UiPath today. 5 years from now, you can expect really wonderful things to happen. And that's the power of compounding when you're at 45% growth just from existing customers.
Sure.
Okay. So touching on customers, they are not making just more money from existing customers. They're also acquiring more customers, right? So the total customers, we touched on it, about 10,000, that was plus 27%. But of course, what we really like to see is how those who spend the most, so more than 100K or more than $1 million, those are accelerating even faster, right? They are increasing faster than the total number of customers. And that's, of course, a result of the retention rate. So very impressive to see 158 customers spending more than $1 million. You can imagine those are very big names from the Fortune 500. We're going to close on the business and the 60% covered on the business that I touched on the previous video. And now we're going to shift to financials. So the next 30% of the analysis.
오늘도 귀중한 시간 내서 미주은 시청하고 계신데 여러분들 투자에 작은아마 도움이 되었으면 합니다. 오늘 전해드리는 컨텐츠가 분량 관계로 1부와 2부로 나누어서 방송이 되거든요. 저녁 시간에 방송될 2부 영상도 꼭 많은 시청 부탁드리겠습니다. 감사합니다.